You are now listening to the Fighting Back Podcast, and here's your host, Jessica Travis.
Welcome back to Fighting Back Podcast. I'm Jessica Travis, your host, and today's episode is episode 12, Abilities Workshop. I am here with Jeanetta Bryant. She is the founder of Abilities Workshop, an organization dedicated to empowering families who are raising children with autism and other special needs. Jeanetta, thank you so much for being here. I am excited to dive into this conversation with you.
Oh, me too. Thank you for having me.
So can you tell us how it all began? Why did you start Abilities Workshop?
Sure. Back at the beginning of time. Now, we're entering into our 6th year, but all of this story began in a way that I couldn't have predicted to have unfolded. Our daughter, Lindsay, so I have 2 children. I have Jackson and Lindsay, and my daughter, Lindsay, had been diagnosed globally developmentally delayed around 18 months by Early Steps. And then after waiting 9 months to get in with a developmental pediatrician, because that's the standard wait time for many of our families, we were met with a host of different diagnoses. And very clinically, someone looked over and said to us, they said, well, she has ADD, ADHD, expressive language disorder, regressive language disorder, hypotonia, and autism. And without missing a beat, went on to say, she will never be able to speak again. She will never be able to have any social or academic gains. Love her for who she is, right? Pretty devastating to hear those words for your child, no matter their age. But at a 3-year-old, and on that particular day, Lindsay looked really cute. And so I'm looking at this really cute 3-year-old, you know what I mean? She was really hell on wheels. She was a point, run, scream kid at that point. So she was putting us to our paces, but she looked adorable. And I thought, what a bleak picture you've just painted for our daughter. And
Yeah.
I immediately started having these moments of flashing back to watching Pretty Woman. And if y'all remember the scene, Pretty Woman, Julia Roberts goes in there with her bags and she's like, big mistake, big, huge, to the people that didn't care for her. And I just thought one day Lindsay's going to have that moment with you. Like I don't know what the hurdles are before us. I don't know how significant I need to weigh all of this in. It was all very new to me, but I just knew that somehow or another we were going to defy the odds, because I just couldn't imagine that being her future and me being willing to accept it. I come from a corporate background. And the next day after this diagnosis, and you got to understand, I didn't know any of this. I was Googling things like autism on my phone in the elevator on the way down. But the next day I was conducting interviews, and a lady comes in at the end of the day. And the moment she turned the corner, I knew that she was overqualified. But she sits down, I'm chatty and she's chatty. And somehow or another, I divulged to her, I'm like, hey, so my daughter was diagnosed with autism yesterday.
Wow. Okay.
And her response to me is, oh, my son has autism. I've written a book on it. Here's what you need to do. So when I tell you that God literally sent Mary to my office, awesome. Here she came directly into my office, sat down, and she told me this guide plan of things that had worked in her world. And she gave me her book, and it changed the trajectory of Lindsay's life.
Wow. We
started implementing these things, and we started seeing some different gains, and some of it was stuff that I knew and some of it was stuff that I didn't know. And, there are ways to kind of score the significance of symptoms in autism. One of them is an ATEC score. That's the Autism Treatment and Evaluation Checklist.
Right.
It's subjective. It's in 21 languages. It's completely free for anybody that wants to jump on and do that. But the number range goes over 100. And at the height of Lindsay's symptoms, she was a 98. So when I tell you point, run, scream kid, I was skinnier. We slept little. It was an interesting time in our life. But today she's a 2. And she does talk and she does have friends.
That's amazing.
She has ridden horses and ice skated and learned how to water ski. And, the options are endless for our kids if you continue to fight for them. Now, I don't want anybody to misunderstand. I'm not trying to say everybody will lose every symptom that they've ever had that's associated. I'm just trying to say that our kids can champion things if we believe in them.
Right.
And that it is our responsibility to give them that opportunity to help them be their best, their healthiest, their happiest, and their most capable of being able to contribute. Because ultimately they want to. They want to communicate in some way. They want to have less frustrations, less anxiety, and we get to be their champion. Anyhow, lots of words just now for me to get to the point of having a very awkward conversation with my husband when I said, hey, that corporate job, it pays a lot of our bills. So I think I'm going to let that go and start a nonprofit. Fortunately, he knew who he married well enough to be like, okay, what does that look like? And I said, I just need a platform to pay this forward. There are so many families that have poured into us and shown us the way to help our daughter be her best. Don't we owe that to the next wave of families that are being told your child is hopeless?
How long was it from that diagnosis to the decision that I'm going to do this? I'm going to make this.
It was almost 6 years.
Okay. Wow.
And she had made significant gains. It's funny to me because we've now passed our 11-year mark since her diagnosis, and she continues to shine in new ways. And it's fun to be her mom. It's fun to be Jackson's mom. He shows me all of the great things that you can have in a teenager. And it's really fun to see Lindsay thrive. It's fun. And I know people are like fun, but it's also really fun to watch one child be a sibling to somebody with special needs, because I feel like they get sprinkled with a special dust. They have more perspective in life. They have more out of the box solutions in life. They just become a special individual when they're constantly reminded of the benefits of their life and the hurdles of others. And so it's fun to be their parent. But yes, so Abilities started almost 6 years ago. And
so tell me about Abilities Workshop. I know that it empowers families with special needs, but what specifically do you do? And does it do?
So Abilities Workshop came into fruition, and if you've done the math, 6 years ago would have been 2019, because it's really brilliant to start a nonprofit
right before the pandemic. Right. We should have known that a pandemic was happening.
That's a good time to do it. And I was convinced somebody was probably doing it smarter, faster, better than we were going to. But we had success straight away of gathering people together. I'm an in-person girl as much as I can be. And so we had success getting people in one room and having resources and having experts speak to them. And you would see these friendships start to cultivate, and you would see this alliance of parents that are like, oh, this family gets me and they understand. And they would share trade secrets of how to do things. And we were doing that consistently. And our last workshop ended at the end of February 2020, prior to the pandemic.
Yeah.
And at that particular
right
one,
the pandemic.
Right.
Yeah.
And in that particular moment, we had close to 60 people attending, and we had moms and grandmas and single dads. And you could feel this palatable, wonderful energy in the room of all these parents just saying, tell me how to fight for my kid. Tell me what the acronyms are. Tell me what it is, and I'll do it. But the concept of building Abilities was always to simplify the overwhelming amount of information. And I thought that it was necessary to do that for the newly diagnosed, because that's what I had related to so well. Then the pandemic comes. I know that these are a lot of words. Y'all are doing great. Everybody listening is doing great right now. So as the pandemic came and everything got shut down, all of the different plans, the 2-week curve, kind of just perpetually stayed out there. Yep. Plans continued to get canceled, and we had to figure out what we were going to do because we weren't able to get people together. That's when our podcast came into be, and we started, I just had a casual conversation. I never even listened to a podcast at this point. And I'm like, yeah, wouldn't it be cool if I just talked to the doctors about all these different things? You say that to the right person, they go, yes, that would be cool. Let's do that.
I do love it when you talk to a person and you give them that, wouldn't it be cool if, and they're like, let's go, let's run with it. Like, I got you. And then they make it happen. And so good.
It was within 8 weeks that we had listeners in 39 countries. And I went,
awesome.
Wow, here we go. That's obviously showing me that there's thirst. There's a need for families to hear this.
Right.
And so we reimagined everything, just like everybody else did. It's like, okay, how do we do things online? How do we get this information beyond Central Florida footprint? How do we work with people everywhere? And so we started building things. And the accessibility one for newly diagnosed families came together rather quickly. But what was so cool about this is that this is all a God plan. This has never been a Jeanetta or Lindsay plan or anything like that, because I couldn't have planned a pandemic. And I certainly wouldn't have planned one if it was part of the business
plan. The pandemic, we're going to have to talk.
We will. There's a lot of answering to that I got to get to. But it ended up working in this way that it boosted us up on steroids, because I was able to reach out to experts that I had admired and looked up to and listened to at different conferences. And they
Who
took my
now are
phone
staying
call.
at home and don't have to
That's
go into
it.
work anymore.
That's exactly, is that they were bored and their calendars were cleared. So they were taking calls from this little baby nonprofit, and they're like, all right, I see what you're trying to do there. I'll contribute. So we ended up getting 100 different contributors from all around the world that are at the top of their game, that lend their voices and their talent to these programs. But they immediately challenged me from saying, okay, you're working on that for the new kids, but what about the kids that are transitioning into adulthood? What about the kids that are hitting a plateau? What about the kids that are in families that are in crisis, where they're homeless, or they're having law enforcement encounters, or they're having issues? What about all these other situations? I'm like, well, if we're going to build it, we're going to build it all. So we just started building all the programs, because everybody was in this mindset of, I have time to do it. I'll roll up my sleeves and I'll do it with you.
That's awesome.
So Abilities came into a completely different formation than I ever anticipated it to be. And it started helping people not just here in Central Florida, but it helped people nationwide. And it helped the parents that couldn't attend our workshops because they didn't have a caregiver for their child to now be able to watch it at 2:00 in the morning on their phone, or somebody in a rural area to be able to hear the same valued information without having to figure out how to drive that hour and a half one way into the city. So Abilities is I'm very proud of all of the people that we've gotten to help and to work with. And it's fun because, and I keep saying fun because I find a really positive, excited energy anytime I get to talk to another family. They're so often isolated. And when you hear somebody's story and you get to relate to them, I benefit from that because it keeps me focused on the work that we do. And they benefit because somebody understands their world. And if all I do every day is try to help one person feel special, then I've done something worthwhile. And if making them feel special and encouraging them to find answers for their child, then we're really onto something.
So I've gone on your website and kind of taken a look at everything that you guys have to offer. But if we're talking to somebody who has never seen your website before, has never heard of Abilities Workshop before, what would you say would be the best way to describe Abilities Workshop and what those resources are?
So it's definitely a resource hub for anybody that wants to come and learn. This is kind of your video library of places you can find and check us out. But I encourage most people to just give us a call, because whether a program is good for you or not good for you, we want to be your switchboard operator. The reality is that we've learned a lot. Me and the team of folks that are in our office, we've all learned a lot along the way, not just from my personal story, but from people in the office, their stories, and all of our friendships in the community. But if we don't know it, as I said, we have a Rolodex. And I know that's an old school word. Like, people don't even know what a Rolodex is anymore.
People are going to listen to this and be like, what is a Rolodex?
Yeah, they're all going to start Googling Rolodex.
Yeah.
We have a Rolodex of really cool people. So if we don't know the answer, we can put you in touch with the people that do. Like, they will know and they can help you. And so ultimately, if you ask me, what is Abilities Workshop? We are a switchboard operator that wants to be your friend.
I love that. That's a great definition. Yes. Okay. Do you have a success story that you'd like to share where Abilities Workshop made a real difference in someone's life?
It's tough. I value every one of our families, and each person that we've been able to help in some way. It's always been a meaningful thing. I will tell you that I was surprised a couple of years ago. So we do a lot of events. We probably do 30 events a year. We're constantly out and talking to people.
And this is just in Central Florida?
No, all over the country.
Okay.
And I was at one event, and I guess we were probably 2 years into Abilities. And this lady comes up to me and she goes, "It's you." Like, she was shocked it was me at the event. And I'm going, I'm at all of the events. I wasn't as shocked by this as she was. And she said, "We came to your workshop." And she was talking about one of the original workshops when people were in person.
Okay.
And she goes, "You changed our lives." And I just got goosebumps from head to toe. And I'm like, how? Like, what? She goes, "You changed our lives." She said, "We learned so much and we were able to apply those ideas. And my daughter's doing so well now because I didn't know so much of this was out there." But the word she chose to say was, "You changed our lives." And it hit me like a bolt of lightning. I was just dumbstruck because I I hope that we're able to change people's lives. I talk about dreaming big and wanting to do things that, change the world. But when you actually are in that moment with that parent and you realize that you have made an impact, it's special. And that impact can be because they're watching a whole program. It can be because we're helping, create a program at your church congregation, but it can also be because you just listened.
Right.
And I try to encourage people as much as I can that if you know somebody that has a child with special needs, whether it's autism or Down syndrome, I should specify that Abilities helps all special needs, even though autism is my organic story. We help people no matter the age, although I call people kids a lot, no matter their age.
Yeah.
The reality is that if you know somebody that is caring for someone with special needs and you care about them as a friend, ask them sometime how they're doing and push beyond their first answer, because their first answer is, I'm fine.
Yep.
Push beyond and say, I know Johnny's fine. I know family's going well, but how are you doing? And it sounds mean for me to say this, but you will get more tears back with that question than anything else you can do. Because most of these parents will say, nobody asks me that. They ask me how Johnny's doing. They don't ask me how I'm doing. And our parents, even the strongest fighter parents, they're holding on by a thread. And so if you know one of these families, one, tell them about us because we'd love to be their friend. But two, just ask them how they're doing and genuinely care enough to want to know what the answer is. And that makes a difference in people's worlds too.
Yeah, it's so amazing when someone can come up to you and say, like, you changed my life. I know, being an attorney for 18 years, I've had so many encounters with my clients who, like, we've got out of the courtroom and we've really had, like, they've had that moment where it's like, you have saved my life, you've changed my life. I get Christmas cards from clients years later just telling me that they're still so grateful for what we did. So, like, that feeling that you have of, like, you made a difference in my life, that's huge.
Well, it's so incredible to have those moments because they propel you forward for the next 12 months, for the next 24 months. Like, they just kind of are those memory banks that keep your energy going.
That's why we do it.
I don't know, you're probably the same way, but I sometimes get lost in the bureaucratic day-to-day of paperwork and, I need to do this and I need to do this and checklists. And you lose a little bit of why you do things until you have connections and until you have. So I don't necessarily take every phone call that comes into the office anymore. But when I'm on a phone call, like, if you're one of the people that call in and you end up talking to me, expect to talk to me for like an hour and a half, probably, because I'll hold you on the phone and I'll ask you about all these things. And it's incredible because I love understanding everybody else's walk and it re-energizes me. And it's a good time.
Well, so I know one of the things that we do when talking about helping people and changing their lives, one of the things that we do is we help families with estate planning and creation of special needs trusts for their children.
Wildly important.
When you're talking with people as far as that switchboard, that resources, what are some of the common concerns that you hear from parents about planning for the future?
So it's not necessarily common concerns. It's our mindset as a parent is that we know. So first, most parents are planning two futures simultaneously. They're planning one that they hope that they achieve. Like, if all of my child's goals are met, then they will eventually be able to be independent and they will have all of these things happen. And then you have to plan the backup plan. And that can be reversed for anybody. One can be the first and primary and the other can be secondary, but you're always planning two.
Right.
And especially, so sometimes these responsible conversations come into play and that denial that we didn't really want to have a child that needed so much support or so many hurdles before them. We didn't, there's a mindset of denial. It's almost like you're grieving the diagnosis when it first hits you. You kind of go back into that denial a little bit later because you don't want to deal with all of the issues that come with that. Like, I don't want to sit down. But here's the biggest one. Is that we don't want to feel like we're sitting at the principal's office, like we've done something wrong. And when you sit down with a financial advisor, you're so exposed, right? Like,
right.
Well, why didn't you save more money? Or why didn't you do this? And people link that Now, don't get me wrong. I don't know any financial advisor that has ever said those words to people, but that's what we're afraid of. You sit down, it's like somebody's going to tell us that we've done it all terribly wrong. And 90% of us are broke. We've put all of our money into our kids. Like, our kids are expensive. They're ridiculously expensive. I think that one of the last stats I saw for a child with special needs is that they cost $2 million. Most people don't have $2 million sitting around. And so the reality is that our families come to the table already in the hole financially, not really wanting everybody to know their business, but they have to expose that to a financial advisor at some point to set up plans. And they also usually tie those two conversations together. Financial planning and creating that trust and creating that exposure goes hand in hand with what guardianship looks like and what does the future hold. It's, I guess, similar maybe to some people that don't want to write a will. They don't want to think about what's going to happen if this event occurs.
I think it's part of the denial.
Right.
They don't want to have that when I go. I need to make sure that I'm planning for the future. When it's kind of everybody is going to at some point, it's better to be prepared and to have that estate planning in place, to have that special needs trust in place, to have that guardianship in place now, and also estate planning as far as what is that guardianship going to look like in the future if something happens.
So it's kind of threefold in my mind. You have the denial that we've talked about, and then you have the exposure that you really don't want to feel like you're an open book to somebody on that level. To anybody listening, people are usually really nice. I've never met the person that's like, what have you done with your life? That person hasn't existed in my world yet, but they're really good people. And then the third is that you don't really want to have the conversation, because of all of the parents that I've met, and we've done surveys and we've talked to people, so this is based off of a few different elements. Every parent's biggest fear is what's going to happen to my child when I'm not here.
Right.
And so that fear of what's going to happen to my child when I'm not here has to supersede everything I just talked about. All of those other worries and concerns have to be dismissed so that that fear can be addressed. And it's tough. It's tough to live in the moment of what's going to happen, because we want to be their champion and their protector and their caregiver and their everything, because we don't know how well it'll go without us. And that's terrifying.
And we've seen situations where people have a good estate plan. They've set up the guardianships. They've set up those things for their children. So when something does happen, it's terrible, but it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
And we've seen other situations where those steps weren't taken, and it's not good for the children. So as much as I think people don't want to face it and don't want to do it because, it'll never happen to me, it's better, I think, to set up those guardianships.
Yeah.
Better to set up those trusts.
Well, if you don't, what's going to happen if I don't do these things is so much worse. So, I mean, we just have to deal with it and make it happen. Two things that I often remind families is that, one, if your child turns 18 and you don't have any provisions in place, the moment they turn 18, you no longer have access to their medical records.
Exactly.
That they're an adult. You don't have access to something. That's terrifying.
You can't go in the doctor's office
and
with
so
them.
I can, and I mean, I understand that there are some doctors that are going to recognize the situation and say, oh, well, this person can't speak, or, oh, this person needs somebody to help them, translate this or to convey this differently. But not all doctors are like that, and they don't have to be. And so I'm guided by the idea of there's never going to be a day that a doctor is going to tell me to wait at the end of the hall while they talk to Lindsay independently until I feel that she's ready for that conversation independently. But to be cut out of it prematurely would be, that would be terrible.
And it's not only doctors, it's insurance companies.
Exactly.
It's government benefits.
Haven't you ever had those calls where it's like, I understand that this is your phone and that you and your husband have been on our system for the last 18 years, but your husband's the primary and he's going to need to say yes before I can talk to you. Like, can you imagine having a conversation with an insurance company about a child that's nonverbal being like, sure, let me just draw them right on over here for you.
Correct. Like, I'm going to need to talk to them about it first.
well, being they haven't said a word in the last 24 years, let's see how well you do with that. But those are the realities of what our families face if you don't have some provisions in place. Or the alternate, the other piece of it is the guardianship advocacy, which is unique to Florida. But if you're a parent like I am that has fought for their child and has celebrated every gain and every milestone, and it doesn't matter if it's big or little, you just are so excited. Wow, there was a word said. Wow, we were able to get through 15 minutes of circle time or whatever it might be. And then you're faced with having missed their 18th birthday,
right?
And they have to go into a courtroom and sit there and listen to you describe every one of their deficiencies on why they can't be their own person. Are you kidding? I can't think of a more demoralizing situation for both of us.
Yep.
And it's just because of poor planning or getting in our own way because we're fearful of having a conversation that's necessary.
And really not even having the information, not knowing, okay, I've got to get in there before their 18th birthday or else it's going to be more difficult on the back end.
Right.
Absolutely.
And just to clarify, you can do guardianship paperwork in advance where you don't have to go into the courtroom. That's why you do it in advance.
Right. And we have a lot of clients we do their guardianships for, and we take care of all of the paperwork for them. We take care of all of the information. The guardian, the parent usually has to go into court once, and typically the ward, the child, never has to go into the courtroom.
Right.
So, I mean, we're able to make it as seamless as possible so that the ward doesn't really even know the courtroom experience, which can be traumatizing in and of itself.
Yeah, our kids have a hard enough go at life without us having to give them extra therapists later.
I agree. So I kind of want to wrap it up a little bit and just talk, what advice would you give to parents who are just beginning this journey, just got the diagnosis, don't know what to do?
Yeah. So a parent, and this is going to sound elementary, but the first thing they need to do is breathe. Because I feel like you just continue to inhale and you never remember to exhale when you're taking in all of this information.
Yeah.
And it's incredibly overwhelming. And there's no doubt that there's such thing as waiting room whiplash, where one parent over here is telling you to do this, and then another one over here is telling you to do that, and you can't keep up with it, and it's all acronyms. And so you're human. If you've just gotten a diagnosis and you feel overwhelmed, welcome to the club. The rest of us feel this way too. But there's a process to it, and understanding what all is out there is what's most important. Have a good conversation with somebody you trust. If it's us, we'll help you outline it. If it's with a friend or with somebody you know that's been through a similar situation, just have a conversation. Say, okay, what are the 10 most important things that I need to know? Not that you have to do all 10 things at the same time, but that you know about them,
right?
So that you can prioritize which ones are most important to you. And then start understanding it a little deeper at a time. Don't give yourself the out of saying, oh, well, this is too hard, so I'm not going to study on this, or I don't want to know any more about that. That's too challenging. If we don't fight for our kids, nobody else is going to. We are the only one that is going to be their champion. And trust me, I have met with a lot of doctors that I've been like, oh, now you get to be the captain of the ship. And then I realize, no, they're not. Not because they aren't good and great, but because they are never going to be in the moment every day with me. They're just going to give expert advice along the way. And so it just becomes very real that you're the person. So what does that mean for you being the person? One, it means that it's in for a very long haul. None of this goes quick. So breathe,
right?
Create a plan, continue to stay on the plan, take care of yourself. Like I said, it always seems a little bit elementary and small to be like, oh, put on the life flight mask first and this kind of thing. And people dismiss it because it sounds cheesy, but it's true. You have to find ways to keep yourself engaged with it at a pace that you can absorb it and continue to move forward, because otherwise you'll dive in not only and wear yourself out, but you also won't know what's really working for your child and what isn't. If you try to do 5 different therapies at the same time, which one is really making progress? It's hard to know that, right? If you're trying 10 different supplements at the same time, which one is really making that impact that has created either something good or something bad? And so pace yourself. There's 1,000 things out there to try and to do and to see our kids improve with, but some are going to look at that as like, whoa, it's 1,000 things. And others are going to be like, there's 1,000 things. If the first 150 don't work, I've still got, and it's going to end up being in their favor.
So, Jeanetta, I know that you just wrote a book discussing the challenges that parents are going through with these diagnoses and raising children with special needs. Can you tell us a little bit about that book?
So that focuses primarily on the autism community. It's called Autism Advocacy Interrupted. And what I've been able to have a front row seat at, not only with our life, but especially with traveling and meeting so many families that we meet, is that there are other more unified special needs communities. I feel like the Down syndrome community is one of the most solid foundations that you can come across. They know how to get their message out and to get the support that they need, and they usually work really well within that smaller subgroup. But with autism, and everybody's heard the saying, right? If you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism, because the different symptomatic behavior varies so much from one person to another that there aren't the same unifying traits all the time. And everybody feels empowered and emboldened to speak their truth, their story, and make it seem like they're representative 100% of the autism community at large. And that causes a lot of infighting. So when I talk about that, pretty much saying that the autism community itself is fractured on being able to have one voice. I'm not looking for uniformity, more unity. And if we can create channels for all of our different initiatives to be successful without stepping on one another, then we're going to be more successful. So I'll give you an example. One of the infights that you see often on social media is a puzzle piece versus an infinity symbol. Who would have thought that two things could drag up such emotion, like real emotion? Well, to an adult that was diagnosed with autism, they usually have lived their entire life with some type of social inadequacy or difficulty or anxiety, and it has created stresses and burdens on them. And for an autism diagnosis to be given to them, they link that to their identity and say, yes, this explains all of my hardships. I'm autistic. I am proud for this to be a part of my life. Don't change us. Don't do anything. I'm perfect the way I am. And that is a valid vantage point, right? Because it speaks all of their experience. Then you have the younger diagnosed children that have more medical complex issues where they might not be able to speak. They might be self-injurious. They might be too and beating their head on the floor. Same diagnosis, just vastly different experience. That family is going to gravitate towards the puzzle piece. So to clear up any back history on this, puzzle pieces were never meant or intended to say somebody was broken. It was always to say, put the pieces together differently and you might be able to come to a good result. But the adult side of the population frequently thinks that they represent broken. And the younger demographic of children will look at that infinity symbol. And if a parent hasn't slept in 3 days and their child screams 20 hours a day, do you think that they can resonate with autism forever?
Right.
Like an infinity sign?
Right.
That's the most terrible thing they could ever imagine. So they're completely disenchanted with infinity. Like autism forever is terrible. They want to be able to put the pieces together differently. So you just have to look at this and say, well, if I understand why you're so adamant here and why you're so vehement over here, then why don't we just get out of each other's way? You use what you want to use. I'll use what I want to use, and we move forward. There's no need to say one person is right or wrong. But that's with each initiative, right? We don't need one vocal group saying that another one shouldn't be changed when one desperately needs help. And we shouldn't say that somebody associating with autism as an adult doesn't represent you well, because if they're making strides within the employment space or within having social acceptance, don't we want our children to graduate to that? So these two vantage points, but there's multiple. That's just an over generalized two bucket idea, but there's several different vantage points within. Anyhow, I've seen where there's a lot of problems for our new families to not get the support services that they need because the loudest voice on social media might be from people that have a voice versus the children that do not. And they say, don't change us, we're great. Well, a newly diagnosed family can go on to social media and they say, oh, so my son's just going to morph into this person without having to do any early intervention, without having to do any of these different protocols. I don't have to do a guardianship. My kid's just going to get there. They're just going to that I don't have to worry. And that's frightening, because we need to make sure that our parents are supported and that they are loaded down with an arsenal of resources to help their children achieve arriving where those others have gotten to. And that's what the book focuses on. But it comes out next month. Thank you for asking me about it.
Really interesting. Jeanette, thank you so much for sharing your journey and the incredible work that you're doing with Abilities Workshop. For those listening, if you or someone you love is raising a child with special needs, Abilities Workshop offers resources and tools to help you move forward with confidence. You can learn more by visiting www.abilitiesworkshop.com. And if you're ready to start planning legally for your family's future, including special needs trusts, estate planning, or guardianship, our firm is here to help. Thank you for listening, and we will see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening. If you found this episode helpful or informative, don't forget to follow us on social media and share this podcast with your friends. Like, follow, subscribe so you never miss a show, and help others know their rights by spreading the word. Your support helps us keep fighting back. The information provided in the Fighting Back podcast is for general informational purposes only and is not intended as legal advice. Every case is unique and should be reviewed by a qualified attorney who can provide guidance based on the specific facts and circumstances of your case. Listening to this podcast does not create an attorney-client relationship with Fighter Law or any of its attorneys. If you are facing any legal issue, we strongly encourage you to consult with a licensed attorney directly.